Hello, Ken Spriggs here. Doing a little short video here on the Aries 1B that I'm currently building from Moebius. And I had been on the internet and saw several people talking about gluing their legs in place so they were permanent in the landed position. Now, I think a lot of them were talking about that as though that would be an easier fix than to go through the steps that they give you in the instructions to glue them so they're movable. Which it really would not be. It's not a simple matter. You've got at least 6 different pivot points just on the main legs, plus you have pivot points on the little foot pad that you couldn't glue them as you went because they have to be angled in just the right way and all be in the same place. So I thought I'd do this little video to kind of show you how that would work. And if you wanted to glue them in permanently, you certainly could after fully assembling the leg parts. So let me go ahead and show that to you. All right, so I've seen some posts on Facebook and some different modeling groups where other modelers building this had said they're just going to glue their legs into the landed position, thinking that maybe that's going to be easier or more straightforward than trying to leave them movable. Now, it really wouldn't be as easy as you would think because you cannot just simply start gluing parts in as you add them on because you're going to put on these landing legs into the kit first. And so if that was glued, you would have to have it in the perfect position to be as it is right here, as sitting up on the legs. And same with the one on top. So probably the only way that would really work would be to build it like I've done here and build up these other parts and possibly even paint like I did. But then get to the point where you have these 2 side pieces and this piece here. So I wouldn't add this piece yet. And I would have the 2 side pieces on, but not glued in place. But you want the legs on because you have to be able to have it flattened on the surface. And then what you would do is you have these 2 pivot points, this one and the one in the middle, which join the 2 legs on the outside. So you would take off one of these sides while leaving another one on to support it. And there's a pin that goes through a half on either side of these that meets in the middle. So you would put glue all around that pin and put in, like the left side, for example, glue both of these parts in so that that pin is glued on the inside nicely with these other parts here and down in the middle as well. Then you would go over and take off the other one and glue that in place as well. Once you got these 2 pieces glued in solidly and on all 4 of them, then you would have them locked in this position as far as these 2 pivot points. Now you still have the pivot points for the lower leg on the inside and the upper leg on the inside. The upper one you're not going to be able to get to, and I'll show you here in a minute, but the lower leg you could get to on the inside of these open panels before you close those up. So let me show you. So you would have, first of all, the locking mechanism on either side, and then you have that cam stop, which is right now in the position where you need it. So you would just glue all of these in place and maybe even put a lot of 5-minute epoxy over top of that cam lock so it's not moving anywhere. And you would do that on all 8 of them all around these. So that would stop those from moving. It would stop that lock from moving so it could not be disengaged. Then at that point, the only thing that you'd be able to try to do, what would be tricky, and especially if you had paint on this, would be to put some glue around these and put those into position. Now you'll notice I didn't say glue these in the cam stops while it's sitting like this, because again, there's that little bit of play. So you do not want to have it sitting like this and do it. I mean, it might work out because it's kind of falling down by gravity, but I would still probably sit it down on its legs so you have it in the position you want it to be. But that's where you're going to be gluing as well, getting these all glued. But the ones for the other legs, as you can see down in there, especially if you're painted it, it's going to be hard to get glue down in there and get that to be glued as well. So you may not need it, but generally this method would work, and you would be able to get the legs to stay in that landed position no matter which way you put them. But you certainly couldn't just start gluing parts as you put it together, because none of these would be positioned the way they're supposed to be. So, all right. So one other thing I wanted to show you, and I'm just going to the instructions and kind of demonstrating what I was talking about as far as gluing these as you go. So for example, here are what I'm going to call the upper legs, because this is inverted. So when you glue these in with these two little connector parts, which glue down onto this big bottom ring, you could not just glue them in place, because you'd have to calculate the exact angle they need to be in order to match up with the other parts once you get to them. So that's, I mean, if you're really good at that sort of thing, possibly, but most people aren't going to be. So you wouldn't be able to get glue into these pieces, as you can see, which would hold that into place. But it wouldn't be a problem necessarily if these joints right here were not glued in, you know, as well. They're not going anywhere, but you really wouldn't be able to get glued on in there. And then likewise, let me get to the right page here. Okay. Yeah, when you put on these legs, which are called the lower ones, these ones we can get glued to, as I showed a minute ago, but you're not going to be able to, you'd have to have all of these on first before you could get these put into as well. So you definitely could stop at this point and get those glued together like I was showing. And then when you put on those outer pieces, all right, so these are the ones I was talking about. So you have these two side parts, and you see they have a nice sizable pin that meets in the middle on either side, and they go through this and they go through this. So you could definitely put a lot of glue on these once you positioned it in the right way, and glue that in to hold these in the locked position, and put this piece on afterwards. But you're going to want to do it when it's standing up, as I just showed. And then likewise too, you can glue these pins into these parts for the foot pad, but that you could do at the very end once all of this is nice and solid and you had glue on the inside where that needed to be. So that's pretty much the best way I can see to go about that. And then you'd put glue in these also, because also in the same way, you're not going to want to, you have to sandwich these in. They're very difficult to do. You really couldn't get glue on the inside of this either, but I think those other ones that I showed should be fine to hold this in place. All right, so I may do this again in the future. I didn't want to include this in the regular build video because once I build parts onto this, you're not going to be able to access these same parts and see what I'm talking about. So I might do some little parts like this in the future as well, if there's some major point that I can go over and do like a little short video. So, all right, hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions about this process, I'll be certainly glad to answer them in the comments. I'm not going to be gluing my legs in the permanent position, but you certainly could do it in the way that I described. All right, thanks a lot.